All right, let's switch over to country. This is Dan and Shay Tequila. All I'm doing is looking at the official music video and giving you my first reaction. All right, we're opening on a winter scene. This reminds me of where I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. It's winter, we're walking through the woods. This camera is going over the trees. And then you see people cross-country skiing. Well, people, two hot young women cross-country skiing, and they're calling out, "Hey, do you see that guy?" And they're like, "Hey," because they're out in the middle of nowhere, they're getting their exercise. This reminds me of Edmonton, Alberta. Oh, they're snowshoeing. Yeah, I thought they were skiing. So they're like, "Who is that guy?" Hey, and they're calling out to the guy, "Hey," and there's some dude there, and they're saying, "He's not moving, he's not moving. Be careful, girls." And then the music comes in. Ooh, hey, well, dude, what's the problem? Are you okay? And they tap him on the shoulder. And he turns around. He turns around and he looks at him. He's deaf. He's saying, "I'm deaf," and he starts doing sign language with her. He goes, "Look, I'll write it down." His look, "I'll write it down." And they're out in the woods, man. This could be dangerous. We don't know. Maybe he's a serial killer. We don't know. And we're going back to town. And apparently he reads lips because they say, "Hey, we're going back to town. Do you want to come with us?" Now, it looks like there's a connection between one of the girls and this guy. He's a handsome guy, but still, they don't realize that he could be, he might have whacked 10 people out there and their bodies are laying in the snow. But we don't know. Maybe he's a cinematographer. Maybe he's a documentary filmmaker. Maybe he's just a crazy guy out there. Maybe they don't have legal weed and he's trying to get it a smoke before he goes back to his house. But we don't know. All right, so now the singing comes in. I don't know if this is Dan or Shay. All right, so the singing comes in. He's playing the piano. He's got a great voice, right? I guess that'd be part of having a hit would be you'd have a good voice. So how did they decide? All right, so when Dan and Shay were coming up, how did they decide if it was Dan and Shay or Shay and Dan? Now, what if Shay was doing most of the work? What if they went through a period where Shay was doing most of the heavy lifting? I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying. And then he said, "Hey," and he's like, one guy's like, "Well, let's call it Dan and Shay." And then Shay's like, I'm kind of doing most of the work. Why not Shay and Dan? Because that kind of is a flow, right? Shay and Dan. Dan and Shay. Shay and Dan. I don't know. Maybe they flipped a coin. So now this girl is getting along with this dude that they saw in the woods. But now look, if you were snowshoeing through the woods and you came across some stranger out in the woods, I mean, wouldn't you still have in the back of your mind, better be careful? So they're drinking whiskey together, drinking tequila together, and they're at the bar. Now, Dan and Shay are are out in the woods themselves. They're out in the snow playing their instruments. Did they really pull that piano out into the snow? And if they did, who did most of the work? You know how sometimes when you're moving a couch and you say, "Hey man, can you help me move the couch?" And then you lift the couch and all of a sudden the other person isn't really lifting. You're like, "Hey, you gotta lift. We're going down the steps. And I'm on the bottom part, so I'm taking all the weight." And then you look and you keep checking and say, "Are they lifting it?" So who knows when they move that piano if who did most of the work? And that goes back to the original question. Shay and Dan, Dan and Shay. Now the piano's on fire. I think that's a little indicator that somebody wasn't happy about who was doing most of the lifting. So now the couple looks like they might be having an argument. The guy's deaf, so they have to argue partially with sign language, partially with he understands lip reading. Now she knows a little bit of sign language, so that means she learned some because they were getting close. She wanted to communicate better. And now they're cutting back and forth between the argument and then a scene of them making out on the bed. And it's kind of a mixed message. So what's happening? Are they getting closer? Are they falling apart? The song is called Tequila, and we all know what happens on Tequila, bad things. So I would say the argument is a result of the tequila, or maybe the other way around. Good things happen too on tequila, so I don't know. It's been years. I was young in those days when I actually, when I actually met girls in the woods like this guy. That was back in Canadian days. So I was like 12 years old. So yeah, now we're back to Dan and Shay out in the snow with their instruments, and we're cutting back to this guy. They got into an argument. He's driving down the road. The deaf guy is stuffing a map of the road into the glove compartment. See, and I don't think the deafness is his major challenge. I think it's map reading, because he's stuffing the map into the glove compartment. First of all, it's a paper map. Who uses paper maps anymore? And then we started out, and this guy was lost in the woods, so he apparently can't read a map anyway. So I think maybe that was the crux of why the relationship broke up. She's like, "You can't read a map." He goes, "I can read a map." She goes, "We found you in the woods. Don't you have Google Maps? Don't you have Waze?" I mean, he apparently doesn't like technology. This guy. Maybe that was it. Maybe when they first met, she's like, "Well, just text me," and he's like, "Oh, I can't text you. I don't have a phone." She's like, "What?" But she liked him. Then you know how in the beginning of a relationship you overlook certain things, but then later they come back and they break up their relationship. So now we're here in the final scene. He goes into a random bar, and who is the bartender? It's the girlfriend that he broke up with, and the first thing she hands him is a phone with Google Maps on the phone. A solution, a gift. Will he use it? We don't know. Because you know how you try to help people sometimes? You give them the solution. You hand it to them. This is how you do it. This is how you solve your problem. You can't read paper maps. No one reads paper maps. You're constantly getting lost in the woods. Here is a phone. She gives him a phone with Google Maps on it. Now, will he use it? We all know people, you hand them the solution, and they do not change their behavior. We'll see what happens in the next video.